Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hi guys, it's Silas from KitGuru, and today I'll be taking a look at the ultra mini, ultra interesting, ultra portable SK621 wireless 60% mechanical keyboard from Cooler Master. So let's start with a bit of background. As I'm expecting to be fairly rooted to my desk when using my PC, I've typically always favoured a full-sized, kind of say wired keyboard. I've made my way through a mixture of membrane, mechanical and semi-mechanical or even mechanical keyboards, and would always have both some positives and negatives to the experience. I had previously tested the Havit HV KB390L low-profile keyboard with Kaylee PG1350 mechanical switches and actually really liked it, only really swapping back to a full-size keyboard to make entering my Windows login pin a little bit easier with the keyboard's number pad. The Cooler Master SK621 shares a lot of the same traits. It's small, lightweight and fully mechanical with Cherry MX low-profile switches. The similarities are considerable, but the SK621 also has RGB lighting, good software support or even the same functionality without software, and is fully wireless with a Bluetooth connection. This being said, these extra features do come at a bit of a premium, with the SK621 priced here in the UK at £139.99. It's certainly a pretty dear product, but do all these features crammed into such a small form factor justify this higher price point? So let's take a look. Firstly, packaging. It definitely feels very premium, and in the box we find the keyboard itself, a couple of manuals, both basically kind of instruction sets for different lighting and pairing controls, and interestingly a very solid premium feeling keycap puller. Wire rather than just a plastic one, which is really cool to see. As the SK621 can be used with both a Bluetooth wireless and a wired connection, you do also get a really robust feeling USB Type-C cable. It's thickly braided and 1.8 meters long, tons of length to reach your system. Really great to see Cooler Master pushing forward with the USB Type-C connection rather than say a micro USB one. The keyboard itself comes in a nice soft touch kind of drawstring carry bag, which is great and reinforces the portability of the keyboard. Out of the bag, I must say the board is absolutely tiny. At 293 by 103 by 29.2 millimeters, it's certainly space efficient and meets the portability requirements. In terms of durability, a quick twist shows there's very minimal flex to the board, which is somewhat helped by the brushed aluminium top plate. The board does feel very heavy duty and solid, and although not kind of crazy heavy, a bit weighty at almost half a kilo, 424 grams. Taking a look at the base, the bottom of the board features a textured plastic housing, all blacked out with some rubber feet placed in each corner. It's a little bit disappointing that there's no height adjustment or say flip out feet on the base of the board, as you've probably come to expect with most keyboards, but the SK621 is very slightly angled from the front to the back, which does certainly help a little bit with comfort. I can understand why flip out feet were not included, more so I guess from a durability standpoint. There is the potential of course for them to break off, but the inclusion of the carry case minimises this in my eyes. Taking a look across the top of the SK621, the low profile nature of the board is instantly apparent. All the keycaps are very flat and double shot, which gives the SK621 a pretty interesting profile. The switches themselves are Cherry MX low profile red switches, which have been designed with quick triggering in mind. With a total travel distance of 3.2 millimeters, Cherry have managed to cut 0.8 millimeters off their typical red switch travel distance, but things like a lack of audible click and the operating force are still exactly the same. Looking at the keycaps, they are all, as mentioned, very flat, and basically every key has a secondary or even a third function, which initially is a little bit daunting, but still pretty impressive. Cooler Master have managed to cram so much onto such a small platform. Things like media functions and the keys missing from say a full-size keyboard have all been basically doubled up onto other keys. Great to see them included, but there is a bit of a learning curve to continue using them all. Along with standard functions, Cooler Master have also managed to include tons of options for lighting and macro control, completely independent of software. Definitely a great idea considering the kind of portable element of this keyboard. So, usability. Clearly there are tons of functions built into the board which we can take a look at along with software, but let's take a look at the wireless functionality. Well, for starters, unfortunately there's no included Bluetooth dongle, which I must admit, considering the price, I would have appreciated. Understandably, you can connect the keyboard over a wired connection, which is absolutely fine, but for those who have purchased the SK621 solely with the intention of using it wirelessly, you will have to ensure your PC or laptop has a built-in Bluetooth connection. From my testing, basically all wireless headphones or mice I've taken a look at recently have included some form of receiver, so even say like a budget Bluetooth dongle would have been nice. What is cool though is that you can have the SK621 pre-connected to up to 3 devices. Connecting the board wirelessly just requires powering it up with the small switch on the left hand side and press both the function key or kind of cooler master key and either keys Z, X or C, and then select the keyboard on the device you intend to connect it to. Each of these alphabetical keys basically dictates a different device, so you can easily move the keyboard from say your home PC to even a laptop or even like a work PC. For wireless battery, Cooler Master suggests between about 4 and 5 months, which is achievable with the lighting turned completely off. In all honesty, it would take way too long to test this, and why wouldn't you have the backlight on really? But with the lighting on, roughly about 15 hours or so. When testing, I found this to be relatively on point, achieving about 7 hours a day for about 2 days before needing to plug the keyboard in and recharge it. In terms of performance, I literally couldn't discern any difference between the wired and wireless modes. To me, there didn't appear to be any delay with key presses or any latency, and everything felt really speedy. For gaming, the left-hand side of the board follows a very similar layout to a full-size keyboard, so reaching for keys like Control and Shift was absolutely fine, and by contrast, seemed basically the same as my regular size or daily driver keyboard. One issue I did find though came with kind of locating very specific keys. A lot of the time I would shift my hand, and considering all of the keys basically feel exactly the same, sometimes my hand would be a little bit lost from say W, A, S and D. A small notch or some kind of texturing would have been really appreciated here. Moving over to the right hand side of the keyboard, things do become a little bit more congested. Cooler Master have crammed in a set of arrow keys, which is great, but to a degree at the expense of a number of keys I actually use very frequently. Things like the right hand side shift key now are placed a little bit more centrally, which did take some time to get used to, and the right hand side control key has been removed completely. To basically cut a long story short, I did find that the SK621 worked a little bit better for gaming for me than for typing. As I type a ton, getting up to speed when blasting out long pieces of text took a little bit of time to get used to, and becoming accustomed to using a function key along with keys like the home, end or page up and page down keys also threw me initially. Swapping from a full-size board over to this 60% layout took roughly about 3 days or so, and by that time, although I did find I'd make occasional mistakes, I was basically back up to a competent speed. In an attempt to improve my kind of key location, I did try swapping out a few of the keys for spare translucent keycaps I had lying around. The improvement from a gaming perspective was basically night and day, primarily as there was a more contoured kind of feel to the W, A, S and D keys, which made them feel much more prominent. But equally from a visual standpoint, a much more noticeable difference with even say a quick glance. The swap-in keycaps also made very minimal difference to the SK621's size and height, and didn't really affect my typing speed, which kind of begs the question, why not include standard keycaps over these flat or low profile ones? At least with my own keycaps installed, there was an easily kind of discernible difference between different keys. So in terms of function and usability, although there is a bit of a learning curve moving to such a small keyboard, and in all honesty this is really something that you should be prepared for, moving to a 60% size, I really didn't find that the SK621 hindered me at all. In gaming, the SK621 worked great. The key presses themselves felt nice and crisp thanks to the Cherry MX low profile red switches, and I actually found myself appreciating the shorter travel distance. Speed in typing did take a little bit more time to get used to, not so much with just kind of like plugging in sentences, but more so for very specific key presses like the N key. But conveniently the actioning function key, or the Cooler Master key, is set on the right hand side, so even becoming accustomed to this didn't really take that much time. A lot of the SK621's promoted functionality comes in 2 forms though, both the wireless onboard configuration options and through software, so let's take a look. Firstly, onboard. There are a ton of options both for lighting and for macro controls, but to be honest, both are a little bit confusing. For lighting, rather than just flicking through different colours, you adjust the amount of RGB or red, green and blue with the function key and Q, W and E keys, increasing the amount of red and green and blue you want. Although this gives you a lot more flexibility with which kind of shade of colour you would like, it's actually a little bit tricky to achieve your preferred colour, and I found a lot of trial and error was required. There are more options for running through specific effects like colour cycling or different colour modes, which can all be controlled through the function, tab, Q, W and E keys. There are also options for cycling LED light modes through the function key, the R, T, Y and caps lock keys as well, or even programming macros using again the function key, F, G and H keys. I will say Cooler Master have done a great job labeling all the keys required for these commands, and there is loads of functionality you can access with just the board alone, but I did find that the instructions were almost essential for programming the board without software. Something like a sticker on the base with some hints or different command combinations would have been really great. Downloading the Cooler Master Portal software, however, makes everything much easier. With the software downloaded and the keyboard plugged into your PC, you have a much clearer picture of what's actually happening. For specifically wireless functions, you can dictate things like the amount of time it takes for the keyboard to go into, say, sleep mode, things like LED brightness, or even whether the small LED ring around the outside of the board is active. Moving on to LED options, there are loads here, like static color, rainbow, color cycling, ripple, or even some pretty unique ones like snowing or fireball, or even snake. Basically everything you can need for matching your new keyboard to your setup. Recording macros is also possible, along with reconfiguring individual key mapping for basically every key press available on the SK621. And all of these settings can be backed up to profiles, which you can switch between on the fly. There's also a handy drop-down menu for switching between these profiles quickly at the very top of the Portal window too. I will admit, following trying to set up even just say a color on the board wirelessly, and then moving over to the Cooler Master software was basically a breath of fresh air. Much easier to make changes with the visual aid. So to summarize, my issue with the SK621 is not so much with the build, the quality, or even really how it functions. More so in what type of user Cooler Master are kind of aiming to target with this keyboard. Don't get me wrong, it's a very cool piece of kit, but certainly for me and potentially others, I'm not really too sure how important portability ranks with a keyboard. I previously tested the Havit HV-KB390L, which was a little bit bigger but lighter, and the key layout made a bit more sense to me. You would be sacrificing Bluetooth connectivity and wireless functionality, but unless you were connecting the keyboard to a system with no USB port, getting both keyboards connected with a USB cable is a little bit quicker. To me, the Havit HV-KB390L in this instance seems just as portable really. If the intention had been to move the same keyboard across a number of devices, which you use frequently, it is really nice to see that the same type of multi-device Bluetooth connectivity kind of tech you see in a number of wireless mice, like the Logitech MX Master being a prime example, is available, which definitely makes multi-device use a possibility. At the end of the day though, it's a very solid, very well built keyboard, and the wireless connectivity is great to have for a clutter and cable-free desk. Honestly, nothing brought me more joy than sitting down and having just such a clean input kind of experience with both a wireless mouse and a keyboard. If you can get used to the slightly awkward layout, which I did, but it does take a little bit of time, and you're prepared to maintain charge of both, say, a keyboard and a mouse, charging them roughly every 15 hours or so, essentially ensuring both get charged maybe, say, overnight, then the SK621 is definitely one to look at. If you are anti-cable just like me, then you will really enjoy how minimalistic your workspace can be, but you will still have to make sure a charging cable is to hand. I personally will probably swap out some of the keycaps and keep the SK621 on my desk for the time being. I feel like I'm a bit of a 60% form factor convert now, but I do implore Cooler Master to provide some keycap sets to really solidify the user experience and user's preference. Also, considering a really good wired keycap puller is included, it seems to suggest some form of user customization in this regard. So unfortunately not a 100% conclusive kind of conclusion. Really, I think there will be someone who looks at the SK621 and says, absolutely perfect, exactly what I've been waiting for, and will happily absorb the £139.99 price. Even excluding the wireless connectivity, those who like a poker or say like a 60% layout will appreciate this form factor is being adopted by more mainstream brands. But as always, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video and like to show your support, make sure to leave a like. And if you would like to see more content from KitGuru, make sure to click both the subscribe buttons and the bell icon below to be notified as soon as videos go live. Also down below, make sure to check out the new KitGuru merch store or even our Patreon page for more ways to support the content we here at KitGuru produce. I've been Silas from KitGuru, and I will see you in the next one.